Thank you very much. While my presentation is getting put up on the screen here, I just want to take a moment to thank the folks who put this together, especially you, Antonia. You've treated me better than I could possibly imagine and made everything very easy, and the rest of you as well. So thank you, and I'm humbled that you think my words will make a difference here and elsewhere. So thank you, and thank you everyone for all the wonderful things you're doing, and I hope I can bring some, and I know I will bring some incredible relationships out of this experience. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about similar things that Ruth talked about yesterday with her work in Ireland and hotels. And what I will talk about is a little bit more broad than that, but the ideas are just as specific. And as Antonia said, I'm coming at this from really an ownership standpoint. My family has been in the hotel business for 50, 60 years now. And so that's, when I look at human trafficking, just because of that and because of that experience, that's how I look at the issue. The first question I always ask is, what can a hotel do? So that's kind of the framing of what I'll be talking about. I thought first it might be nice to introduce you a little bit to where I come from. So I'm from the United States, and I come from Minnesota, so up there in Orange, right on the north, bordering Canada. I think it's the greatest state in the U.S., but I'm a little biased. And I have a couple pictures to share with you. The top one, if you can see, shows some of the temperatures that we are used to in the winter. And that is, yes, negative 50 degrees Celsius. But we get some good weather on the bottom there too, so it's really a wonderful place. So with that, now that you know where I come from, let me introduce you to Carlson. So as I said, my great-grandfather started Carlson in 1938. It started out as a stamp business called gold bond stamps. And the idea is very similar to coupons. And he was one of the first people to really bring the idea of coupons to grocery stores in the United States. So that's how he got his start, and it's really evolved over the last 75 years. And so now it's Carlson is primarily a hotel company and a travel company as well. So some of the names you may recognize, especially the Europeans, Radisson, Park Plaza, Park Inn, and then Country Inns and Suites is our largest, but the vast majority of them are in the United States. And so I'm incredibly proud of what my family has done, not just the business aspect, because my great-grandfather certainly captured the American dream better than anyone I know. His parents immigrated from Sweden, and he started the company with a $55 loan from his uncle, and it's really grown into something special. So obviously I'm very proud about that, but I'm more proud about what my family has decided to do with the resources and the blessings that God has decided to give us. So in 2004, Carlson became the first major North American travel and hospitality company to sign the ECPAT Code of Conduct for the protection of children in travel and tourism. 6 years later, in 2010, we signed the United Nations Global Compact. And then just last year, Carlson became the first company to receive the Presidential Award for extraordinary efforts to combat trafficking in persons. So we have a track record of fighting slavery with our business resources, and it's been something that my family is very dedicated to, and I'm very proud of. So that's kind of the foundation. That's what Carlson is, that's what we do, and we have decided, of course, not only to provide 100,000 jobs around the world, but also to fight slavery as well. So now I'm going to go into my recommendations, and I'm going to spend a couple minutes on each of them. And I've tried to be as specific as possible because I think that's incredibly important. We have a tendency to talk about things very broadly and say, you know, awareness raising is fantastic, but how are you going to do it? And that's always my first question. So I tried to be specific, but hopefully if I'm not specific enough, you all can ask me some questions and make sure I'm being specific. So the first recommendation I have, you can see the three up there that I'm going to talk about, a training program for employees, marketing human trafficking hotlines, and then a coalition of hotels in collaboration to fight slavery. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is very similar to what Ruth focused her presentation on yesterday, which is training employees to recognize trafficking in hotels. I think this is an incredibly important idea, and it's something that Carlson has been doing for several years now. The idea first came to the fore, so to speak, in 2005 and was implemented in all of our hotels by late 2011. So our program in particular, so every one of our hotel employees around the world are required to take this training. And so our brands number about 1,300 around the world, so that comes to about 80,000 employees. And so all 80,000 of our hotel employees have been trained to recognize trafficking in hotels. So this training includes a number of things, and it's worked into the responsible business training that they already receive. So one of the things is a 10-minute film clip from a documentary called Not My Life, which my family foundation partially funded. And this documentary is about child trafficking and exploitation, and it helps introduce the issue to employees who otherwise do not know about the issue and are not aware of it. We follow that up with a conversation about the film and a presentation about child trafficking as a whole, and then we move into a discussion and a video talking about potential scenarios. What are the things to look for? Ruth touched on a couple of them. Some other things to note are, especially with adults, if somebody comes in and tries to pay in cash or tries to pay with a prepaid card, that's generally a red flag. And with the children especially, it's something in terms of psychology. It's really important to pay attention to the behavior between the adult and the child. It sounds simple, but you really have to answer that question. Do they look like they're a parent and a child? And you can get a sense of that if you're paying attention. How do they act around each other? Does the child appear to like this other person? Does the child appear uncomfortable or comfortable around this person? Things like that. So all of that, the film, the conversation about trafficking as a whole, and then the conversation specifically about what are the recognizing factors, what things should you look for, and what scenarios could come up. All of that comes together to form the training program that we put all of our employees through. And it's a little hard to see, but those posters and similar ones are posted in the back of all of our hotels. So it helps employees recognize trafficking as well as how they should report something if they see something. So the idea that we put forward very vigorously is that they should never intervene on their own because it's incredibly dangerous. So they should go to the procedure that we have is they go to their manager, and their manager, if he believes there's due cause, should call the authorities. So like I said, all of that together forms our training program, and that's something that I think every hotel in the world should be doing, no matter how small, no matter how large. And every Carlson hotel has to have a responsible business trainer, and 75% of the staff has to be trained at all times. And the reason it's not 100% is for the reason that Ruth talked about yesterday, which was turnover, which is quite high sometimes in the hospitality industry. So that's the training program, and that's something that Carlson already does, and that I hope every other hotel in the world. And I know it'll happen in Ireland, at least, but I hope it happens elsewhere as well. So the second idea I'm going to talk about is human trafficking hotlines. I've talked to a couple people here this weekend about it, and I know there are human trafficking hotlines all around the world. I know there's one in Greece now. I know there's ones in, I believe, India. There's one. And really all over the world, in the United States as well. And so what these hotlines do is it gives victims a direct line of communication to the outside world, whether it's through a phone call, sometimes through an email, and then at least in the United States, through a text message. And the problem with these hotlines is not the hotlines in themselves, but the problem is that a lot of victims don't know they exist. And so I think that because hotels are often a place where trafficking happens, and where victims spend a lot of their time, it's the perfect place to get them this information and ensure they're getting the chance that they deserve to get out of the life. And these hotlines don't mean anything unless people know they actually exist. So this second recommendation I have is that hotels, again, all around the world, need to be looking at ways to advertise these hotlines, the information for their region or for their country, depending on where you are in the world. Some numbers are regional, some numbers are country specific. But I think hotels need to look at ways to advertise these numbers and get them into the hands of survivors and also of the general customer. Millions and millions and millions of people stay at hotels every year, and there aren't many industries that can say, you know, people will spend 48 hours or 24 hours in our establishment, and they'll do it by the millions. So it's the perfect place to get this information to survivors and also to raise awareness as well. So a couple of suggestions that I had in terms of how to advertise. Some of the things I've heard is putting numbers on bars of soap, putting information on shampoo and lotion bottles, perhaps putting a card in every hotel room, putting information on the walls, putting a sticker on a bathroom mirror. There's a lot of avenues, a lot of ways that you can go. I personally prefer ideas that involve the bathroom, simply because if you've ever been in a hotel room, I'm sure all of you have, the bathroom is really the only place that's private in a hotel room. It's the only place that you can lock a door and really have any chance of another person in the room not seeing what you're doing. But certainly open to conversation on that. But I think this is another thing that hotels should be doing, and it's a responsibility, I think, because of how many people walk through hotels and how hotels do unfortunately play a role in allowing trafficking to exist. So that was my second recommendation. The third recommendation is a little bit more broad than the other two. But the idea that up here you see 9 of the top hotel companies in the world, some of the largest, and often a lot of them you might not recognize the names simply because they, like Carlson, they only have brands. They don't actually name, like we don't have any Carlson hotels. The hotels are all named something different. So don't worry if you don't recognize some of these names. But these are huge, huge, huge companies. Together, I think they make up at least 10,000 hotels around the world, which is astronomical. It's huge. And so this third recommendation I have is that these people need to be sitting down with each other. The CEOs, the responsible business directors, the directors of procurement for supply chain, they all need to be sitting down with each other in the same room, not only sharing information and sharing best practices, which is very important, but they also need to be deciding on how are we going to move forward together as an industry in a very specific way. So I don't know exactly what such a coalition would look like, but ideally it would really just have to be a convening power, something to get people in the room talking together and get hotels willing to collaboratively work with one another on very specific things. I don't think up until now, I mean, I'm very proud of what Carlson has done, and I'm very proud of what my family has done, but it's time, I think, for us not to have to be a leader anymore. I think it's time for us to all hold hands and walk forward together, even though at the end of the day we're competitors and we're all fighting for a certain share of a certain market. This is an issue where we cannot fight one another. We have to cooperate, as Sister has said several times this weekend very well. So that's my last recommendation, that we need some kind of convening power, whether it's an organization. It doesn't have to be an organization. Maybe it's just a name, but something to get people in the room together, something they can sign on to, and you know, every year, or every 6 months, or every 2 years, whatever it is, come together, have comprehensive discussions, and say, here are 5 policies we're all going to implement at our hotels over the next 10 years, or 5 years, or whatever it is. So those are the 3 recommendations that I had. I have quite a number of others, some in my paper, some that are not. I think another thing that I didn't talk about today that's really important is supply chain, which we haven't talked really at all about here, but which I think is incredibly important because if you look at the issue of trafficking and slavery, the vast majority of victims are in forced labor. And the reason they're still in forced labor is because companies continue to buy products. And just like any other company, hotels buy products. They buy bed sheets, they buy furniture, they buy towels, they buy shampoo, they buy everything. So I have a number of other ideas as well, but in conclusion and in sum, what I want to do is I want to turn the hotel industry into a more positive influencer than it already is. And I want it to use its resources and its strength to fight trafficking because unfortunately the industry is in many ways ground zero for sexual exploitation in many countries, and it also contributes in large part to the problems we have with forced labor. And hopefully, if the hospitality industry is able to get together and act on this issue, perhaps other industries will follow suit. So with that, thank you all, and hopefully I was specific enough.